Okay, dump the server. Oh, man, that was pretty good.
And I'm glad I called in when I did, man. I mean, I hope I didn't, bore you guys or talk too much or anything like that.
No,
not at
perfect.
all.
Yeah, you were perfect. I started running out of questions. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I mean, it's your show, Ed, man. I don't want to bring that down or anything like that.
No, Josh, don't feel like that. No, you call any time you want, man. Don't feel that way at all. You're one of my favorites. Yeah.
Thank you, bro.
No,
so, all right, man, I got a question for you, Mac, dude.
Oh, wait, by the way, guys, I'm still recording, and well use this, we'll put it up on YouTube. So, anything, we can edit it out if it's something we want to edit out, but try and filter yourself.
Oh, no, this is totally about John Lennon.
Okay, shoot.
This is totally about the Beatles. All right, so let's be real. Last night, and I love the White Album so much, man. That record is so incredibly dark, like, it's totally a record about a violent class struggle. You know what I'm saying? So, like, do you think really that, I mean, I know that the Beatles were dabblers in the occult or anything like that. Do you think they somehow unintentionally started something that they shouldn't have? You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes when you're a genius and you pull music out of the air, you know, you don't really have control over what it can do to other people. Do you think, like, somehow, like, they accidentally did anything, you know, because that record is just ridiculous with the synchronicities, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that is sort of goes with the story of anyone doing. You're digging down into the collective conscious, and you're dealing with the archetypes and with forces that are really much larger than you as an individual artist. And I have often had that experience myself that, you know, something will be something that I write and draw and put out there will receive an interpretation that I didn't necessarily intend, but I can't necessarily discount as being a valid interpretation of it, you know, because you're dealing with the creative force and you're channeling things as an artist. You're acting as, in some ways, like a shaman, you know, and you're dealing with the very fabric of reality, because the artist works with perception and uses the various tools of his particular discipline to alter the perception of the reader or listener or viewer. But when you alter perception, when you affect perception of the audience, also affecting reality, because, of course, perception is reality. And a work that you create,
dude, I didn't even know you before tonight, and I wish I could give you a high five through my telephone, dude. I'm telling you. That's exactly why I make music. I'm not even joking. Exactly, music is magic. You know what I'm saying? That's what Alan Moore talks about. I mean, I sometimes may have my problems with his philosophy, but I mean, as a genius with words and knowing what words mean, he is a legitimate magician. I mean, he obviously studied under Crowley, which the Beatles used on Sgt. Pepper's. But thinking about it, they went from Magic Mystery Tour to the White Album, which is night and day. It's no longer like, let's take acid and stare at flowers. The White Album sounds so dark and so incredibly. There's so many references to, like, guns and shooting, even Bungalow Bill and things like that. It's all about, like, class struggle. Back in the USSR, turns like No, keep going, Ed. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah,
back in the USSR, though, it was ridiculous.
The swap out of Paul. Do you think Paul was swapped out? I believe he was.
I don't know. I remember when that big controversy happened at the time, and, you know, I had to wonder at the time. But over the years, when I look at the evidence, the photographic evidence and so forth, it's just not very convincing to me. But it was a weird phenomenon, I'll say that.
Well, tying the Paul is dead thing definitely ties into the occult aspect. They definitely knew what they were doing with their audience. Whether or not Paul is dead, man, if the new Paul is a replacement, he wrote Blackbird. I mean, I'm not even going to, like, complain about that. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm really just going to lay it on the line, even if it's evil. I mean, geez Louise, like, some of those Martha My Dear is about his sheepdog. Like, how much of a beautiful song is that to be about a dog? You know, like, come on. So, I mean, that is what leads me against it, you know what I'm saying? Because if there was some evil, malevolent thing, Paul McCartney, like, wrote the most beautiful orchestral Beatles songs, which is why I'm coming around to him now, and why I love Ram, and I'm coming around to Wings now. So, I mean, if he was a cloner or a replacement, he was probably way more talented than the Paul McCartney of '66, you know?
Yeah, I believe he was.
So maybe that was a good thing that happened to him.
Yeah.
which is terrible to say. That's entirely terrible to say if the real Paul McCartney was decapitated in a car crash while looking at the lovely mermaid, you know? Which is what the story apparently is.
Yeah.
But, I mean, come on. He has a new album this year, which is actually pretty darn good. I haven't read too much into it. The guy that tried to sneak into George Harrison's house and knife him, was he, in some way you might think a mind control victim?
Well, you know, I've always wondered about that. That was a strange incident, and following the Lennon assassination, then naturally your antenna would be out for the fact that, well, if somebody else makes an attempt on a Beatles life, then you've got to, you know, look at it with a little extra scrutiny. I don't know. I've never heard any research or any speculation that would suggest that it was a weird incident. The fact that he was able to get into a house that was presumably had some kind of security was surprising, and but what the motive might have been, if it were some kind of a mind control patsy breaking in to assassinate him, I don't know. But I know that he came very close to killing George Harrison, and it was and then of all things, within a very short time afterwards, just a few years, Harrison dies of cancer. And I don't know, the whole episode was troubling, but if there's any kind of a conspiracy angle to that, I don't know what it would be.
Well, you know,
Mac, have you ever? Sorry, Ed. I'm so sorry for talking over you, man.
Well, we've been joined by Christian Wallace, who always has a lot of good information on this stuff too. Can you hear us, Christian?
Yeah, I had my mic muted. How you doing, guys?
Hey, what's up?
Hi there.
Hey,
good show. I just wanted to say that ahead of time I'm a huge Beatles fan. I think like everybody else, and I actually paid over $200 to go see Rain, which is probably the premier Beatles cover band. And what's interesting about that is that I think there's two reasons why people go and see them. Number one, because they're good, and number two, because the Beatles stopped touring in the late 60s. And that's when all the stuff, 66, right? And that's when all the stuff when they started to kind of switch, and Paul, you know,
that's when they blew up, man. They went from, oh my goodness, Rubber Soul, come on,
right?
I can't believe. I'm sorry for interrupting, Christian, but can you guys believe that they never played those songs live? Like, come on, some of those songs would have been amazing live. Sorry for interrupting. Keep going, Christian, man. My bad.
No, I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. I just wanted to say that ahead of time because I figured you'd pick up on that. That's exactly the point I was going to make, is that it was such an amazing show because, you know, no one ever got to hear those songs live. And, you know, it kind of plays into it, you know?
Well, and if you read, like, a lot of their autobiographies and stuff like that, that's, like, when they, like, started, like, getting into drugs, you know? I mean, I had my own, like, you know, beliefs and all that. The first time they ever smoked marijuana was with Bob Dylan and Muhammad Ali. Can you believe that? That's so amazing, you know? Who wouldn't have wanted to be a fly on the wall in that room, you know?
With Dylan.
So,
and I also read that somebody dosed John in his coffee, and he freaked out the first time, but then he got into it, and then they went through the whole Magical Mystery Tour, and if you ever read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which has to do with this whole thing, because that was the American side of it with the the Grateful Dead and Ken Kesey and all those characters, trying to, they wanted to meet up with the Beatles, and the Beatles kind of took that idea of, getting on the bus and going across, the country and, all that stuff. And, creating this counterculture with the LSD.
Hey, Chris, real quick.
Popularizing it.
In that book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, there's a guy in there named Moran. Do you remember his first name?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
Okay.
Howard Moran?
What is it?
Howard Moran, is that it?
I don't think so. It might be like Mike. But if you can look it up for me one day and email it to me, okay?
Okay.
I got a really good story about that.
I knew you would.
Yeah, about that guy, yeah.
Please head and everybody. Just like me. You know the Rainbow families and all the hippies and everybody.
Well, I knew that guy Moran, too, and it was really interesting. You know what? I'll tell you another time.
Good one, Mr. Wallace, when you mentioned the Rainbow family, do you mean the guy that blew himself up in the desert?
Well, I was thinking more like I think if Ed is talking about the ones that I'm talking about, the guys that kind of are remnants of the
Grateful Dead,
the old hippie days, and they kind of, some of them live in national forests and things, and they they all come out and have meetings and everything, and then they go right back out into the national forests or parks and reserves and live in there, even though you're not really supposed to. And these are big events; they're not little things, and a lot of the Grateful Dead members are members of the Bohemian Grove, funny enough. So it's funny how everything sort of kind of, links together.
Well, the guy that I knew, who was the head of the Rainbow family at the time, he had gotten into a dispute with A.J. Weber, with a guy across the street, and they accused him of being a KGB agent. And I asked him about it later on, and he admitted to me that he did receive money from the Russian embassy. He said it was for his poetry. But the guy, yeah, I know. But he admitted he was on the Russian payroll. This was 1980-81.
The Rainbow Family, a KGB plot. Wow.
Yeah.
Well.
That's actually a good story, Ed. You should actually elaborate a little bit more about that guy.
It's a great story, and I want to leave the guy's name out across the street because I don't want him coming to beat me up.
Sure. No, I did a story about him being a poet and then being funded by... Because I heard you tell part of it before, and I was like, I found it interesting, but I didn't get the whole...
Well, it's right. Well, he claimed, because he admitted, they first accused him. They said, look, what do you expect? The guy's a KGB agent, right? So I heard this, and I received it. But you hear a lot of things, you don't believe it. So when I saw him again about a week later, I says, hey, man, what's up? I says, these guys, they're saying you're KGB. And he goes, oh, no, don't worry about that. He goes, I get money from the Russian consulate. They pay me money for my poetry. I get a stipend from them every month. But, yeah, I know. But there's nothing wrong. Don't worry about it. But the guy was on the Russian payroll in 1980, 1981 in New York City doing political activism. But they were all up to stuff, all those guys.
That's very interesting. It makes me want to pose a question that Douglas actually brought up when you were talking to him about Lennon. Do you guys know if there were actually any, facts behind him supposedly, supporting, resistance organizations worldwide or anything like that? Or was that just having an idea?
Were there organizations behind were you asking were there organizations behind John Lennon?
Or if he gave money to any organization that would be like a resistance group, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Maybe that would have been another reason. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he gave money to Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. I know he did.
Oh, word! I didn't even know that. That's pretty cool. Right on.
And didn't he also? Was it on Dick Cavett where he came out and he said basically that he had met with the Black Panthers and he had read their mission statement and said, hey, look, I kind of get what they're doing, and, I've kind of reevaluated some of my stances on, when he's saying revolution, he goes, count me out. If it comes to violence, count me out. And then he goes in, and he switched the lyric.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
he started kind of, walk that line, sort of, and when that happened, I think also with Jimi Hendrix, the same sort of thing. That was very threatening, I think, to the establishment, and for him to go on that show, and espouse those things was big. That was really big. That would be big now.
And he had mainstream access. He was able to go on shows like Mike Douglas, Dick Cavett, and so forth, and he could, get a mainstream audience much easier than anybody else could, and that in itself was dangerous.
True, when he Mike Douglas that week, he brought on Abby Hoffman and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
The whole week.
Plus, his whole image was like he was always supposed to be the smart one of the group, so everyone would take him seriously too. If you think about it,
mm-hmm.
It'd be different. It was talking,
Oh, you guys
know, Ringo. I love Ringo songs; they're so good.
Greg McGowan and the work he did on the Laurel Canyon and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've read some of that stuff, and it's fascinating. I don't know quite what to think about it, but there is an interesting pattern there that he describes. So you had all of these musicians, later who went on to become iconic persons, who come out of this Laurel Canyon scene, who had family connections to the military and to the power structure, and that's a really interesting area there. And I think Jim Morrison was one of that group, because his father was this Navy admiral who was in charge of the fleet in Southeast Asia, and I've never really known what to make about the theories about Jim Morrison. I seem to recall there was a book that came out in the 90s called Secret and Suppressed. It was I think Farrell House, one of these publishing houses that put out a lot of great conspiracy literature. But this was an anthology of different articles, and there was an interview in there by a researcher named Thomas Little, who had begun researching the possibility that Jim Morrison was a CIA agent and had actually faked his death and was living now under another identity. But he had an interview with, of all people, the former CIA director William Colby, who, as I recall, sort of confirmed some of these ideas. Not that really? Colby is necessarily a credible source, but it's a strange thing, and that's something to look up. The book is Secret and Suppressed, and it's probably still available, on the internet and so forth. But the actual motivation for that, for what would have been, as I recall, some kind of an early infiltration by military intelligence of the counterculture, but it had the consequence of building these careers for these, really in many cases great musicians. But as I say, I've never known exactly how to interpret that or whether or not to believe it.
Well, there's an element too.
Well,
there's an element to the LSD introduction too. Was the military and the same. It was a bunch of real hairy books who brought in all that LSD and was feeding it to everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no doubt in my mind, obviously, that his father was a Navy admiral or he worked in the Navy, obviously. I mean, that's common knowledge. But I think some of these theories kind of play off like his insecurities himself. He didn't want people to know that about him. He wanted to be a mysterious guy. I mean, Jim Morrison had his own problems, obviously, but I'm not even going to deny that he was good,
There's a picture of Jim Morrison on that Navy deck, on that ship, looking like a.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, there's a lot of where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot with the Jim Morrison that you can look up. There's I'm glad that Mack brought up. There's a interview with his father and his sister. I guess it was with some DVD set, and the level of detachment in his dad, when he speaks about him, it's very strange. His sister is very broken up. The two of them heard about the death over the radio, which I thought is very odd for having, finding out their son is dead. The other doors didn't believe that he was dead. Everyone thought he faked his death almost immediately. No one believed it. They said he was buried so fast. The other thing that was odd about it, too, was that there were charges pending against him in Miami. He had a near-genius IQ. He had gone to film school. There's an interview that I had heard about this tangentially through John Milius, the director that did Conan, and he wrote the script for Apocalypse Now, which uses the Doors music in it. And he and Francis Ford Coppola were talking, and they were talking about Jim Morrison in film school that he dropped out of. And, it's just a little too coincidental, some of the things with him. And,
he had no music background.
Right.
He was a film guy. He had no musical background.
Exactly. You're very right on that. Honestly, I love his vocals on those tracks. But some of the stuff is a little bit, I don't know, too cliche. Some of it's pretty good, but, his vocals work well, but mainly the Doors to me have always been like a really great band that could have used a different lyricist, frankly. Ray Manzarek's so in the pocket with the keyboard, so, I give him a pass.
And he just died.
And wait a second, who did the story on Jim Morrison? Who did the official story?
Oliver
Stone, who did JFK, and did the McMartin story, too. He produced that McMartin whitewash.
That's right, he did.
And Salvador, too.
Right, Salvador, too, right.
Yeah.
Oh, man, didn't he go to talk radio on the assassination of that one guy that was there in Groove or something like that?
I couldn't make that out.
Talk radio. That was the ones that was based on a play. What was the name of that actor? Eric Bogosian. I didn't know Oliver Stone did that film.
But he did Scarface, which kicked off the great cocaine business that Reagan was behind.
I think that was De Palma who did.
No, he wrote it.
He wrote the screenplay,
yeah.
He wrote it.
And he wrote the script.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then he
did Natural Born Killers, which kicked off the whole violent media craze of the early 90s, too, the whole cover every violent aspect of
and who's in there?
Stuff.
Woody Harrelson.
Right.
Who's his dad?
Woody Harrelson, his dad was one of the hobos, man.
Yeah.
His dad was the last person to assassinate a federal judge.
Yeah.
His dad was also one of the bums, the supposed bums at the JFK, assassination. He was supposedly one of the hit teams.
Yeah, and who wrote that book? A.J. Weberman was the first guy from the Yippies. A.J. Weberman was the first guy who wrote Coup d'etat in America, which exposed those bums. No one pulled it out before him.
Right. Yeah, look into Woody Harrelson stuff, and then there's that shoehorned joke in White Men Can't Jump. It's literally shoehorned into the movie where he says the joke about JFK, and he goes, "It wasn't me, it was the CIA," and it has nothing to do with it. It's just totally, wedged in there like a big F you to the audience, or it's a wink to the people that know, about his family lineage or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Mac, everybody loves you, man. They all want you to come back on.
I would love to, too.
The chat room's still going crazy, man. They're still talking about you.
That's great.
Yeah.
So many possible topics to cover.
What was that, Josh?
Is this still going out, Ed? Like, people are still hearing this? I thought you were recording it privately, man.
No,
people can make fun of me in the chat room.
We're recording it privately, but
I'm just joking.
They're still talking in the chat room about the show, though, from a half hour ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Man, that was really good. Those are some good talks, man. This is an interesting subject because, to me, it ties into everything that really is important, which is cultural arts used as a revolutionary method. And inevitably, any government wants to crush that because if you, inspire someone's ideas, then they're likely to use anything they can to, fight against. You know what I'm saying? If you're doing good work. Which ultimately the Beatles were doing good work. Blackbird's a beautiful song, and honestly, Charles Manson was right about that song. Paul McCartney admitted it was about, like, racial issues in, like, the 60s. Blackbird's a beautiful song.
And everybody is a different kind of a Beatles fan. You can like their, their rock and roll sort of stuff. You can like Paperback Writer. You can like the Rubber Soul stuff. You can like the Revolver stuff.
Paperback Writer was written, if you look at it was written backwards. It was written by the guy who, the name on Paperback Writer was the guy...
dude from the Process Church, right, Ed?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's true. Who owned it's the same guy that owned the art gallery where they met, where John met Yoko.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Jaco Ikemono, something like that. Ikemono, some funny name.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that.
Hey, Mac, you want to hear a good one, man? Paul McCartney in England used to hang out with William S. Burroughs.
Well, that's interesting. Burroughs is on the cover of Sgt. Pepper, isn't he?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Burroughs is the one that taught them about doing stuff backwards on the records. Right.
I didn't know that. That's
and
great.
Burroughs, back in the 50s, wrote a story about 2012, the Mayan calendar. He was talking about it back then.
Man,
that's right.
Burroughs, man, like, I really, like, enjoy his writing. I don't know about him as a person. Like, frankly, I'm not even going to, like, fuck around. Oh, we are recording this privately, right? I'm sorry, man.
But it's going to go on YouTube. You can curse.
Oh, sorry about that. I won't
we can't
again.
slander people. We can't defame people. We can't admit to...
Oh, this isn't slander. I mean, it's public knowledge that William S. Burroughs shot his wife in the face when he was drunk trying to play William Tell. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, all bets aside, like, William S. Burroughs is kind of a weird guy. I mean... I've seen his movies with Brian Geisen, what inspired the cut-ups and the backwards masking. You guys need to look into Brian Geisen, too. He was, like, one of the first total collage artists. And he was a heavy occultist, too. Both of them were heavy occultists. He inspired Alan Moore, really. Yeah, Burroughs claimed that he shut down a restaurant by repeating a ritual on a tape player walking around outside, and it did close, so...
Yeah, I can believe
he knew about... He knew about magic with a K in the dark arts. Him and Allen Ginsburg, who wrote Al, were two of the first people to bring ayahuasca up to the States. There's entire diaries and all that.
He used to come down to Yippie headquarters, and he was a pedophile.
What? You met Allen Ginsburg? Are you kidding me?
Several times. He's a weird guy, and he used to hang out with Mickey Cesar, who ran Dial Joint, who was also a pedophile and a member of NAMBLA. You know Allen Ginsburg is a famous pedophile.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. I can't believe that you met Allen Ginsburg, though. That's what blows me away.
I met a lot of people, man. I met...
Ed knows everyone.
I do know everybody, right?
Forrest Gump. I said this the other day, and I meant it as a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Ed was like the Forrest Gump of, those... I mean, he just bumped into everyone, in his travels.
No, because the girl that called before, I knew Ted Gunnarsson.
Yeah.
Ted Gunnarsson from my PI work.
Oh, that's what I wanted to bring up. And you guys...
Oh, sorry, Christian.
If you didn't mind weighing in, all three of you, the Phil Spector connection, and then him, going to prison.
Yeah.
He was like...
He pulled a gun on John Lennon, dude. He pulled a gun on the Ramones. He was notorious for being quick to pull a gun on people, man. I don't like Phil Spector. As a person, I mean, I love Rondell. I love that orchestral production, but him as a person, he's a complete scumbag. I mean, in my opinion, that's not slander, I hope.
Yeah,
I mean, he pulled a gun on Joey Ramone. How are you going to pull a gun on Joey Ramone? That's like pulling a gun on a house cat, you know?
Yeah, Phil Spector was an accident waiting to happen for years. It's a wonder that it took so long before he finally killed someone. But yeah, great music, but a really bizarre individual.
Yeah, what I hear is he has a really easy ride in prison right now, and he has a BlackBerry in prison.
Well, didn't he write everything in the portrayal of him with it was Pacino portrayed him on the HBO. They did a dramatization of it, and he wrote like everything. I mean, not just oh God, I gotta look it up. But you'd be surprised. Some of the songs you would never imagine. I was like, where does he come from? Who is this guy? And then I looked up some video of him the famous, incident of him pulling the gun with John, he would go in, and the two of them were dressed almost exactly the same. And when John was doing that song where he attacks Paul, he comes in and sings like backup with him in it. And the two of them were dressed almost identically, and they looked like best buds. Really weird.
Well, I mean, when you go with the Beatles in Los Angeles, like anytime it seems that one of them goes down there, weird things happen. Have you guys ever heard that Paul McCartney actually went to Doris Day's house when it was owned by Rudy Altobelli?
No, that was John Lennon who went there.
Oh, John Lennon. Okay, my apologies. Also, George Harrison wrote Blue Jay Way on a street called Blue Jay Way in Los Angeles too. That's a great song. I'm throwing that in there. You guys continue.
Doris Day's son was Terry Melcher.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Process, no?
Yeah. There's your Manson connection again.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm trying to get May Penn.
Man, who knows? Charlie knew all those people, though. Charlie was friends with Mama Cass. Charlie met Jim Morrison apparently at a place called, Beans Cafe or something like Beanery or something. I'll have to look it up.
Okay,
he knew all those people. Obviously, Dennis Wilson and Neil Young has admitted that he admired Charles Manson's music, He knew all those people.
Check out Scott Michaels, man. He did a video about Charles Manson, 6 Degrees of Charlie Manson, of Helter Skelter. And in that video, he talks about Manson was part owner of an escort service.
Right.
And a legitimate escort service that had legitimate offices and stuff like that. Everyone pictures him as this guy out in the desert. But the guy was really, he had money.
Yeah. Oh, he was connected with the Gambino crime family.
Oh,
no, not the Gambino crime family, the Genovese crime family. The guy that taught him to play guitar, if you read any of the books about him, the Creepy Alan Carpus, right before he got out of jail, he was a member of the Barker gang, and he was a mafioso.
Oh, really?
Jay Sebring was a mafioso, too. He ran cocaine out of his hair salon. He was Frank Sinatra's hairdresser. He was Marilyn Monroe's hairdresser. He was Yul Brynner's hairdresser, which, what was he doing for Yul Brynner? You know what I'm saying? He was going in there selling drugs, you know what I'm saying?
All right.
I got to plug.
I mean, no knock against Jay Sebring. I mean, people got to make money,
There's a great book that we didn't mention earlier about the Manson family, which this is written by a friend of mine who's a great conspiracy researcher, Adam Gorightly. And this one came out just about 4 or 5 years ago, called The Shadow of Saint Susanna. And that's one to really
Hey, did we lose Mac?
Mac, you there, man?
Yeah. Mac? Chris, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Did we lose audio for a minute?
Yeah, we lost Mac. We're getting him back. Now, what about Josh? You there?
It shows Mac in the queue. I don't see Josh.
Okay. Let me, I think we lost.
The two of us can talk in the meantime.
Yeah, Josh has to call in.
The thing that I was wondering about was the Lost Weekend that John had. Was that a mistake, do you think? Or do you think that was, just overhyped?
No, I've been listening to that. I've been listening to a lot of stuff from May Pang lately. Yeah, sorry, I messed up. Yeah, I've been listening to May Pang lately because I'm trying to get her on as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
We're Facebook friends, okay?
Oh.
Yeah, and so we got her email. We contacted her. We're trying to get a hold of her. So I've been listening to all her stuff, and it's really, really amazing stuff, man. She talks about when her and Lennon went to California, they were hanging out with process people galore.
Were they?
Yeah. And also, too, she talks about how Lennon was hypnotized by Yoko. Paul was hypnotized by Yoko. And
you guys there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. I lost you for a second.
No. It's cool. It's cool. You guys continue. I'm sorry, Ed.
But there's interviews with her on the radio in the last 5 or 6 years where she's talking about this, about how John went, the reason why they broke up was because she invited John to come over to quit smoking to see a hypnotist. And then the next day he broke up with her.
Oh. That poor guy, he had it coming in every direction, I guess. They were trying to, everyone was trying to hypnotize him.
Yeah. Hey, Mac, are you back? Yeah.
It shows him in the queue.
Yeah, I know. Maybe he's on mute. Hey, Mac, you might be mute.
Yeah.
He says, getting an error message, lost your call. Okay, let's try and get him back. But go ahead, guys.
Oh, well, have you guys heard into the stories that Yoko kind of controlled him and, like, used, like, horoscopes and palm readers and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was a little bit of slander, like, it's well known that, like, John Lennon, like, at the very least, like, sniffed heroin. You know, people say he never shot it up, but, like, there's a lot of conjecture that Yoko, like, sort of got him into that state.
Yeah,
to, like,
I believe that he was.
Take it.
Well, guys, one thing I was going to say before, because there's been a lot of murders and extortion around this case, too. You got Mal Evans, who was Paul's butler, who was shot by the police in London. And then you got all these guys who worked for John and Yoko, who were arrested for extorting money out of them, threatening to go to the public with recordings and inside information that they had about.
Well, it's funny how many so-called inside, some of the women, so many books that supposedly talk about, exposés, basically, that so many people have written over the years, of, maybe mistresses they had, saying, oh, well, they did drugs, oh, shocking, like when they were in, their early days in Germany, they admitted that they would have to share the stage with the other band. And instead of like playing for 6 hours and the other band would play 6 hours, they'd play 1 hour, the other band would play 1 hour, and they'd take speed and they'd literally be foaming at the mouth, like jumping up and down. And it was like I think they got syphilis or something, like they contracted CDs, and it was just a real seedy part of oh God, help me out with it. Where they were, was it
Hamburg?
Yeah, Hamburg.
And all that is that same kind of MK Ultra trauma, mind control kind of stuff,
Right.
Funny that it was in Germany, though. If you think about it, that's where it all started.
Yeah, kind of like a red light district there.
Yeah. Well, the limo driver wrote a book about the last days of John Lennon, and he was shut down. Yoko bought up all the copies of the book and sued him out of existence. The guy, you can't find anything with this guy anymore.
Well, that's what I was going to say, too. That she endorsed the Georgia Guidestones and thought it was really good. And the other thing, too, was he made a couple of jokes, and I was saying a lot of people tell truths in jest. He said, oh, this Japanese witch, and he referred to her like that, broke up the Beatles a bunch of times. And, it's funny how people sometimes act like they're kidding, but then they say stuff. But then Jim Morrison had a woman that came and tried to sue for a legal claim to his estate because she said that they had a satanic wedding and she was actually his wife.
Right.
And she was a practicing witch, and she said, we actually are married and I want some of the money that he made.
Hey, Mac, are you back?
So, she was prominently featured in the Doors movie, directed by Oliver Stone.
Yeah, that's right. They made her a lot prettier in the movie.
Oh, definitely. Oh, man, I've seen those bonus features yet. No offense, I mean, to each their own.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said about regarding substance abuse with the Beatles and all that, I mean, everyone has their follies and things like that, but have you guys ever read into any of those even weirder conspiracy theories that the Beatles were a Tavistock creation to get people to start using LSD and drugs and things like that?
Yeah,
personally, I've always thought Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, as like stupid and hokey as that joke is, actually kind of one of the more weaker Beatles songs. Like, it's too obvious what they're trying to hint at and things like that. I think as much as people say Sgt. Pepper's is the best of all time, it's either Revolver, the White Album, or Abbey Road, obviously, or Rubber Soul. Like, all of those, even Meet the Beatles or Beatles for Sale, all of those are better than Sgt. Pepper's, and that record with the album cover with Aleister Crowley and like all these like people on it. That's the one that's always been promoted by Rolling Stone magazine as like the #1 album of all time, the craziest, trippiest Beatles album of all time, like things like that. And I mean, She's Leaving Home, like A Day in the Life, Within You, Without You, those songs are amazing and things, but the sequencing of that record as a musician is so like abrasive. If you listen to the White Album or Revolver, every song flows right into the next one. George Martin knew exactly what he was doing with those records. With Sgt. Pepper's, it's almost like someone had a gun to their head and was saying, all right, you open with the song Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, you end with A Day in the Life, you know?
Right.
And not to mention, I'm sure all you guys know the occult fact that it was 50 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper's told the band to play
Crowley.
Was like
Crowley died that
50
day.
years. Aleister Crowley, exactly. All right, so you guys run with that, man.
Yeah, and you know what else too is this is my theory, Josh. This is just conjecture. That I think the Beatles wrote the majority of their stuff, and I think that if there was an album, maybe they claimed it was Adorno from Tavistock and all that. It was in Professor John Coleman wrote a book about it, and there were actually chords that you weren't allowed to play. The church had banned them because they were, this is really interesting stuff. I gotta look up what the exact name is. And, it's because of the vibrations, they just like some music can soothe you and everything. And, that was, supposedly part of that whole Tavistock thing. I'm not doing it justice, but what I think the Beatles did play the majority of their stuff. They wrote the majority of their stuff. But you could maybe make a case that some of this stuff was pushed at a certain point by...
Well, it should be noted, obviously, during that period when they were exposed to LSD and things like that, both them and the Rolling Stones both got into the occult. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's really no denying it. They admit it with themselves. There's interviews with them saying that their music is magic with a K.
Right.
I mean, that's why I respect the Beatles. They were willing to break that boundary and admit that they did it. You know what I'm saying? But with Sgt. Pepper's, there's something that's so manufactured as like, this is your new Guernica, this is your Mona Lisa, this is your new national anthem or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
There's no doubt that they wrote those songs, but to me it was like, I don't know how much control they had over that album cover, you know what I'm saying, or the sequencing of it. The sequencing of it is so incredibly jarring if you listen to it, to me. And I love most of those songs on Sgt. Pepper's, especially She's Leaving Home. That's in my top 5. That song is amazing. Mm-hmm. And they start with the 5 o'clock, that was apparently the day that Paul McCartney was pronounced dead,
Yeah, you know what, Josh, I don't believe any of that. I believe the Process Church swapped the Paul out, but I don't believe any of that stuff about the car or any of that, the car accident, that it was any kind of accident. I think it was planned, and that he was swapped out on purpose by the new Paul that was involved with the Process guys.
Huh. But...
And then it led on to the murder of Lennon. It all seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, because then they isolate from him.
Right.
But do you know that Heather Mills, before she met Paul McCartney, was engaged to an MI6 agent?
Well, she was one of Adnan Khashoggi's prostitutes.
Mm-hmm. I mean... It's hard to say because the Beatles are such a cultural touchstone. You know what I'm saying?
It is. And why did Heather Mills? Sorry, Josh, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
What's that, sir?
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was going to say something about Heather Mills.
Well, for one thing, everyone knows she has a wooden leg, right? And that's no diss against her. I mean, but like people tried to tie that in with like some Paul McCartney lyrics. I know one time to tie in with the he's a plant thing. So I don't know. So maybe you're right, Ed. All right, continue, Christian. I'm sorry for interrupting you, sir.
No, the only thing I was thinking was she had said, I discovered something about Paul, and I have it in a chest. It's locked away. If something should ever happen to me, and I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, if you guys get divorced, why would anything happen to you?
Wait,
you know what I'm saying?
we got Mack back.
Pretty cryptic.
Mack.
It's Mack.
Hey, dude, what's up, man?
Yeah, I got your message. Try the landline. So here I am.
What a mess.
Yeah, well,
we were just talking about Heather Mills, McCartney.
What to her? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a strange interlude in Paul's life.
Yeah.
No, but what I mean is she said, if I should die, it was very cryptic. She said, this will go out to, different sources, almost like a dead man's trigger.
Right.
And what in the hell? First of all, who would murder? Like, let's say everything's, you look at it very Pollyannish, and you say everything's on the up and up, and, they just were going through a rough, whatever. Like, who says that? Who goes on TV and says, if we break up and I should get murdered, all this information is going to go out? And then she goes, it's not what you think. It's not drugs. It's not homosexuality. Yeah, like she said all this stuff, and it only kind of led to, it didn't leave too many options open. It was a weird thing to say.
Well, but the thing is, man, it could be anything. It's not that they've been swapped out. It could be anything. It could be mind control, LSD, implantation, government control, whatever.
Something that she would get killed over.
Well, okay, but what the thing is, you think she'd be more afraid of Khashoggi. Because it came out live on TV. It came out that she was one of Khashoggi's prostitutes. They showed it to Paul live on TV. He said, oh, shit, what's this? What's going on? I don't know anything about this. What's that? And he was right in the middle of a divorce. You'd think he would be happy if he could use that against her, know?
Right.
And Khashoggi is involved in everything, Iran-Contra, every kind of forever. All these guys, Khashoggi's yacht in New York City, he sold to Trump, but Michael Jackson partied on that yacht. Geraldo Rivera partied on that yacht. Goldstein, the guy from Penthouse. All these guys.
Well, I was thinking of this earlier, and you just brought up them partying together. Remember when Jackson and McCartney teamed up in the 80s? Now, supposedly he bought the masters or the, all the Beatles, their original music.
Yeah.
And how rude is that to outbid a fellow artist? That's crazy.
Right. Now, what was going on there? And then he went with Lisa Marie Presley, so then he'd get the Elvis collection as well.
Yeah, right.
And then walk away owning half of Sony Sibley. That was a huge power grab, but the two of them were working together, making that song. So I'm just trying to think, if they swapped him out, I mean, this is big money, is what.
But wait a second, you know who was in Michael Jackson owed money to a payday loan company that was run by Meyer Lansky. It was the descendants of Meyer Lansky owned this big giant payday loan company across the country, and that's who Michael Jackson was in debt to. And then later on to Damon Dash and that bunch.
Right.
Those drug dealers, those guys.
Well, the other thing too, and this might be a kind of off topic, but I was going to say, there is this ceiling that black artists, entertainers, businessmen, there's pretty much a ceiling that they hit, and they can't go any higher. And there are no Magic Johnson owns a bunch of movie theaters and properties and things like that. But when it comes to like the Fortune 100, there's none that are owned that are all black owned. You know what I mean? There's no company that.
That brings to mind something really interesting. Remember Bill Cosby back in 97 was about to purchase, or he was going to be a contender to purchase the National Broadcasting Company.
Mm.
And in the midst of that, his son was killed,
Kidnapped,
murdered.
right, yeah.
He was
killed.
It was weird incident that happened on a Hollywood freeway, and it was never entirely explained. And it turned out that it was a Russian immigrant, someone possibly with connections to the Russian mafia or the old KGB. And in the aftermath of that killing of Bill Cosby's son, well, Cosby ended up not purchasing NBC.
That's
Wait
right.
a second. Wait, also, too, right after that, because I have a connection with Cosby, too. But the thing is that right after that, he arrested some woman came and said, oh, I had an affair with Cosby, and he had her arrested for saying that.
Yeah, saying that he tried to drug her with Benadryl to rape her.
I don't know about that part, but I know she said she had a baby with him or something like that, had an affair with him.
That might not have been the same case.
And she wanted some money, and he had her arrested for it. In New York City.
It was the three that happened was that Michael Jordan's father, random killing, Bill Cosby, and O.J. Simpson, pretty much all three around the same, sort of time frame, not too distant.
Yeah.
And they were the Cosby, his son Ennis. He was a 6'7" college basketball player. He was in, I believe, his own neighborhood, and he said to the guy, "Look, I've never had a gun pointed in my face before. Take my money." And the Russian kid just shot him and said, "I don't," and claimed the reason he did it was because he just didn't like black people. He said that was supposedly his motive. The other thing was, I don't even think he robbed him. The other thing with the Michael Jordan's father, the two idiots that shot and killed him, he was at arrest on his Lexus. They then wore the rings, videoed themselves, and made phone calls. It was almost like, they did everything as conspicuously as possible to get caught. And Michael Jordan didn't give it any attention. Neither did Bill Cosby with his sons. Right. You know what I mean? It was almost like those were hits, and they kind of, veered away from giving them more attention than they would have if they had been, let's say, real tragic killings, or
I don't know about that, Christian, man. I got to say, as a North Carolinian, most people underrate how important Michael Jordan is to the state. Like, he's really the cultural identity the state has. Like, people.
I didn't mean like that.
In the Ashes ages, when I was a kid, when Michael Jordan's father got shot, it was everywhere. Like, to us, it was as important as the Oklahoma City bombing, as facile as a comparison as that would make. To us, it got so much press.
Not with Josh. I barely heard about it, so.
And people, do you remember that, what was it, Warner Brothers movie Space Jam? There's this entire, really acted out, homage to his father. The movie's dedicated to him. It's really sentimental and all this stuff, It's
right.
Totally corporatized, like you're saying, and I agree that it wasn't as fully investigated as it was because, like you're saying, dude, a lot of that, how could Michael Jordan's father just get killed like that? He is, to our state, one of the, our cultural legacy. People, when you think about North Carolina, you think about college basketball, you think about Michael Jordan, the number one in the game. You know what I'm saying? And,
yeah.
I'm not I love basketball. I'm more of a hockey fan myself, but to us, Michael Jordan is, the number one thing. It was really reported here, but nationwide, I agree with you. It wasn't reported as much as it was. I just like to throw that out there, sir.
Hey, Matt, what do you got on this?
What I was going to say was, no, I have two pictures hanging up in my office, and they're me when I'm 16 years old with Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. I was the biggest Michael Jordan fan in the world. I stalked him outside of his hotel at the Hilton in Orlando. I got married in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and I actually applied and got accepted to go to school at Chapel Hill. So, no. The only thing I meant was that I thought I heard Michael Jordan say he didn't want to give those kids the attention, his attention or the satisfaction that they had, caused him that pain by showing. I thought I had read that somewhere, or that he tried to keep.
It's not really even that, man. All you guys are like a couple of years at least a little bit older than me. I'm 26.
A little bit.
For people in my age frame, when that movie Space Jam came out, everyone remembers Space Jam. It has Bill Murray, Larry Bird, Wyoming, like everybody. You know what I'm saying? Bugs Bunny. Come on, you know, everybody remembers Space Jam. But what everyone remembers is him and his dad. So you're probably entirely right that it was a psy-op. I mean, I'm not questioning our state's number one like hero and stuff like that, but you might be right, Christian, man. You might be right, dude.
We have Mack back. What do you think, Mack?
Well, I don't know, that much about those particular cases, and I don't know, really what the psy-op angle might have been, except that it might parallel what we were talking about with John Lennon, that if you have a high-profile individual who is an icon to a generation and who inspires that generation, then if there's a psy-op angle there at all, then, it could be something to, break the spirit of an entire generation. And for what purpose, I don't know, but, there's this strategy of tension that is talked about in, with regard to terrorist incidents, the idea that you keep a population entirely off balance, and with uncertainty, with civil unrest, with the constant threat of violence, and that could extend as well to keeping a population off balance with regard to their cultural icons, their heroes. I just throw that out there as a possibility. I don't really know, anything that would that would prove that, and precedents are kind of hard to come by as far as something that you can prove. But it would be something to consider. Psychological warfare.
Yeah.
I think you tied that together very nicely.
All right. To break the ice on this, Christian and Ed, you guys never told us what your favorite Beatles song is. Come on, let it rip.
Well, you know what? I was going to say Blackbird, but I didn't think that many people were that familiar with the song. I thought it was kind of a... Yeah.
Oh, you have no idea. When I was at work tonight washing dishes, I was actually singing Blackbird because I knew the show was coming on, man. That song is so beautiful. The chord changes. The chord changes in that song are just so amazing.
God, how can you ask somebody to pick? It's hard to narrow them down.
Yeah.
I like, I like Paperback Writer. I like some of their early stuff. I like, Twist and Shout. I like, I like all, different era. I guess I have to, it's kind of like, which era of Beatles. And I think there's one song in each, as they progress, as they get more mature musically. I like one off of...
In one sense, Christian, have you ever read the story about Twist and Shout? That Lennon literally sacrificed his vocal cords. He shredded him on that last song, and that's why it took so long for the vocal follow-up.
The thing about John Lennon, though, a lot of people think that, he was so, peace and love and everything. All the guys said, he was, because they say Julian is, very, because he was raised by his mother and everything. They said John was actually the tough guy. And when he would get drunk, he'd actually be kind of surly and a lot more aggressive. And he was kind of like the working class, he kind of had a chip on his shoulder and was a little bit, he could be belligerent and stuff. And, a lot of people saw him as a real peacenik, but, yes, he promoted peace, but he was also kind of like the, a rougher type of individual than people, kind of view him.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
that's my thing. That's why I rank John Lennon like a little bit lower. I mean, I love John Lennon, obviously. I've loved like George Harrison since I was a kid and everything. Like he's, you know, I've always been the quiet one myself. You know, the more studious, like Eastern-minded person. That's why I identify with George Harrison. But which I hate to say it, but with the lives of John Lennon, what kind of rang true is like I could really imagine John Lennon like in an angry mood, hitting like Stuart Sutcliffe in the head. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's just how he was, and there's this image that he was peaceful and things like that, but like, he notoriously had abandonment issues. Like Julia itself is written about his mother who died when he was 18 years old, taught him to play banjo after like leaving him and coming back into his life. And he sort of got Yoko into it with like the woman of the sea references and the seashells and all that, because Yoko Ono's name in Japanese means Lady of the Sea, or a transliteration of that. So like, John Lennon always, like, he's so menacing in his songs, which is why I love the White Album, and I think it's so dark. Like, you go into a song like Glass Onion, and he's talking about a man with his monocle, but he's saying, look through the other half's eyes, like, the fool on the hill is still up there, still, things like that. John Lennon, like, really knew what was up, like, really, I mean, I feel like he had a legitimate problem expressing himself, like, fully. He made a song like Imagine when he was rolling in $1 million bills and like sniffing heroin, you know, and telling people to imagine those possessions
and
when he had everything in the world. He wasn't a flawless person. Like, I love him to death, but I'm not a flawless person at all. You know what I'm saying? With my music, I try and preach peace, love, and enlightenment like he does. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, we have to acknowledge that John Lennon really wasn't a saint. You know, Paul McCartney wasn't a saint. Ringo Starr definitely wasn't a saint. Brian Epstein wasn't a saint. Neither was George Martin, even though he might have been the best of the bunch. But, I mean, John Lennon, I don't know, I feel like some of the songs are so dark. Like, if you listen to the White Album, you hear, like, the nylon strings of Dear Prudence, or you hear when he says Mother Superior jumped the gun and happiness is the one gun. All of that, like, whether he knew it or not, like, he was initiating something that he didn't. There was so much power in those words that anyone could interpret it. You know what I'm saying? He unleashed something, like, really raw. Your blues that stop right, like, 3/4 into that song where they're really going, and then he just stops. Like, that's genius. He was a genius. Like, even something like just, like, starting over on Double Fantasy or, like, that song God or Ballad of John and Yoko, you know, he was so genius, you know, but he was too, like,
can I ask you guys?
I don't know, he's too angry to exist sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to say he invited it on himself. He was a peaceful person, but, like, he put himself in a situation where some bad stuff was going to happen because he was too smart to not say that, Nixon, you're destroying the world, or you guys should be equal, women and men should be equal, like everyone of all colors should love each other, you know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask you guys a
question,
right?
Couldn't handle him. Sorry, Ed. I'm sorry for ranting.
That's good.
I love John Lennon. Keep going, brother.
Right after the assassination, Yoko did a solo album. Now, you guys familiar with that? Because there's a lot of occult talk in there. There's a lot of stuff about her talking about throwing the dice and lining up with the wrong people and making the wrong choices. Are you guys familiar with that work?
Is that the Season of Glass? Is that the title of that?
I think it is, yeah. And I've been looking for the lyrics on that, and I can't find it.
You know, I have a copy of that, which I bought when it first came out, and I think I listened to the album once.
Okay.
and haven't since. It was an interesting album with a memorable cover, you know, with Lennon's bloody glasses there on the window. but I'm afraid that my memory of it is really dim. It's fairly obscure.
Right. And I heard an interpretation of it on the radio at the time, because I was really, following everything at the time, that was talking about, there was like really heavy occult references in that album. Mm-hmm. About how she felt that she had taken the wrong choice and had made a mistake in dabbling in the occult.
Well, she was an artist, but what was she really? What was her claim to fame? I mean, who was this Yoko?
Her parents are billionaires in Japan.
Right, that's what I thought. I mean, she wasn't somebody off the, just that he just bumped into.
I will say this, and it's been well noted by everyone associated with the Beatles, that the common knowledge that Yoko Ono came in and attended every band practice and broke up the Beatles is really a myth. In my opinion, John Lennon had such abandonment issues with his mother. If you listen to that song, Julia, he associates his mother with her. He wouldn't, let her go to the bathroom without him standing outside the door. He legitimately thought she would leave him at any time,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying she played on that, but really,
that could have been.
I don't know. That's become an archetype among itself. That a woman will break up a group of artistic people.
Yeah, but Josh,
in and of itself,
you got to listen to all the May Pang interviews, because what she talks about is how John was being hypnotized, and he said to her, "Yoko's willing to take me back." After they were living a really happy life, a whole different kind of life in California. They were about to buy a house in California.
Right. And there's
definitely, I agree with that. I'm not in any way a Yoko Ono supporter. With the exception of the song "Listen, the Snow is Falling," I really can appreciate Yoko Ono, and I love noise music. I grew up making noise music and avant-garde music myself. I just really can't support her, but the idea that she created in and of itself is a psy-op. How many bands do you know that broke up because they perceived a woman was getting in the way of someone? When in reality, it was probably put there to perpetuate John Lennon's, his own self. He had real not mommy issues, but abandonment issues, because his mom died when he was at a formative age. She herself taught him how to play banjo. She died on his 18th birthday,
Yeah, but you want to know what, though? Besides all the mommy issues and stuff like that, there were serious money issues going on with the Beatles, with their marketing and with their stuff like that. And,
can I throw out two things, Ed?
Yeah, shoot, yeah.
You guys can answer them. There was two very laudable things that I thought John Lennon did. There was a fan that was a little bit off, you could tell, and it was caught on video, and he actually walked right up to his house, and he said, but you said in your song, and he starts quoting the lyrics to him, and John Lennon says, yeah, but you're reading into it too much. And he's like, that's not what I meant. And he's like, and he's actually trying to help the guy along, and the guy's, obviously this really big fan, but he's a little spaced out. But John Lennon's taking the time to talk to him, and you see the softer side of him, and he's explaining what he meant by the lyrics, and he's saying, don't read too far into that. And I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of a famous clip. And the other thing that I like that he did that I think more celebrities should do and do not is that he knew he would be followed around and get attention, wherever he went. So he figured he'd use that to his advantage and talk about the things he wanted to talk about instead of, stupid celebrity stuff. He would talk about political stuff and, important things, and relevant things that were much bigger issues than, you growing your hair out longer or whatever it might have been. And, they just don't do that nowadays. Celebrities don't. They
It's not allowed, no.
Yeah. So I thought that was something.
He took a lot of flack for the bed-in Amsterdam because, all the media shows up there, and and the famed cartoonist Al Capp, who was by this time a popular conservative columnist, shows up, and there's this debate between the two that was filmed, and you can see it, in a documentary about the Big Dead End for Peace. Mm-hmm. And he's being taken to task by these reporters for doing this stupid thing, having this dead end, and so forth. But he says, the dead end itself is not the point. It's to get us here talking about the war. Mm-hmm. And that was the point. And of course it was self-evident that he was using his celebrity to stage these publicity stunts. Mm-hmm. But they actually did serve the purpose of putting a dialogue out there in the mainstream about war versus peace.
And there was one that he did, I think, when he went over to Amsterdam or somewhere, or Denmark. They had never seen him, and they put the bag over them. And he said, I felt so bad because, the poor reporters wanted to get photos of us, and we decided, it would be all about the message. And here, all they got was, us under a sheet, and they were talking. And then there was the other one where the lady, this is where you got to see the tougher side of him. She said something that touched a nerve, and she said something about the youth, and he said, well, I'm working class, and that's the way I talk, and my fans are working class. Do you know what I'm alluding to, which one? And he kind of gets in a shouting match with her. I guess he was cranky from getting off the flight, and she just asked the wrong question about him influencing young people or something in the wrong sort of way. I forget what the question was, but a whole other side of him came out. And, you got to see, he just, you wouldn't see that today. And it wasn't that he was mad at her like a Alec Baldwin type stunt like you see with him, where, he's strangling people and stuff like that. He was genuinely angry at what she was saying, ideologically. And I thought that was interesting insight into his personality.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, people want to romanticize the Beatles and put a label on them, Ringo Starr, he was the goofy guy. Paul McCartney was the cute one. George Harrison was the silent one. And John Lennon was the smart one. When in reality, each one of those people had entirely different views. Like, they started out young playing together, but by the time they got up to Rubber Soul, they each had, they felt they had an opportunity in front of them, and they somehow melded it into them. You hear George's Eastern influence, Paul McCartney's almost show tune-esque thing. Ringo Starr has a little bit of country western. And in some way, John Lennon, to me, even, and I hate to pound it into the ground, but the White Album especially, John Lennon's songs are so raw. They're almost proto-punk, like the stops and starts in Your Blues. I can't believe, that cut 3/4 of the way through that song. It comes out of nowhere. And even when they did the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus with Mitch Mitchell on the drums, John Lennon really knew how to rock. He grew up with that stuff. He was taught as a person, I feel like a lot of people preyed on his, insecurities. Honestly, he was a fallible person. He was a good person, but as all of us are, he had faults.
Mm. What year was that? Josh?
What, the full circus?
Yeah.
I believe he recorded it as the Dirty Mac. It might have been, I want to say it's either 68 or 67. It was the last public performance of Brian Jones shortly after, I believe, he was murdered, personally, in my opinion.
And why do you think the Rolling Stones are going strong and those guys are we'll probably outlive all of us?
Why do I think that? Because
I'm saying almost as a, just to, for a little bit of levity, it seems like they can't be killed.
Well, I'm going to lay this on the line. And it's because me as a musician, my tendencies and my attitude with how I express my music, I more identify with the Rolling Stones, like their attitudes and things like that. The reason that they're going to go strong and while they're going to exist probably way beyond me, Richards can probably breathe underwater, would be the fact that they sacrificed Brian Jones. Like, honestly, he was a multi-instrumentalist. He played literally 24 plus instruments on Satanic Majesties, which they were manipulated into doing, but Brian Jones just took advantage of it and made it his own thing. And people led him around into the nature of the fact that he was a young guy and wanted to meet up with girls and things like that. But he was the one that brought the blues to the UK, really, besides John Mayall. I mean, I gotta say, in my opinion, like, Brian Jones is the reason that the Rolling Stones are still existing to this day. Mick Taylor quit them real quick. Mick Taylor was there for, 3 albums or so? He was a young cat. He came from John Mayall. He knew what was going on, that it was really the Mick and Keith show, which they're the dark Lennon and McCartney to me. You know what I'm saying? They're equally as valid.
Okay, Josh, hold on a sec. I heard a story.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, I heard a story from a guy told me that at Altamont, you can see in the video, because there was a sacrifice at Altamont as well.
Oh, you can see Meredith Hunter literally getting stabbed in the cranium by a member of the Hells Angels. It's on the DVD. Sorry for interrupting you, Ed.
That's okay, man.
It makes me so mad, honestly.
Well,
and it's another one of those bad synchronicities where they're playing Symphony of the Devil,
right,
and the camera focuses right in on the audience, right at the fact when Meredith Hunter is staring right at the stage.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, man, because what I heard was, and I was told this, that you can see in that video Michael Aquino and Rob Reiner.
Oh, really?
Were present there, and that that whole murder was a satanic sacrifice. And what do you think, Mac?
Well, I'd never heard that one before, but
right.
It would certainly make sense because you had a death right there in front of the stage. It never occurred to me that it might have been planned as a sacrifice, and I certainly couldn't discount it. And, I would love to see the footage that you're talking about. I mean, I've seen the Altamont film, but if you got Michael Aquino